right now the coronavirus issue has become a politically polarizing issue, and I believe that the church needs to stay out of politics entirely. So by requiring a mask or requiring a temperature check, the church would be specifically taking a political stance, which would never be the position of the church.
Hello everyone, my name is Nikki Schumacher. I just attended the protest against mandatory mask wearing, and I interviewed some of the moms and dads here about whether they would ever consider attending a church that mandated temperature checks for the kids program.
What I have seen is that if you actually come out to a protest and you watch what's happening and you have conversations with people on both sides of the issue, you're going to see what's actually happening. You're going to see the truth, and it's going to remove the feelings of fear that you get from consuming the media and being on social media like all day. Because I have friends in Meridian who would not come to this protest because they thought that Antifa was going to show up. There is a degree of fear that is being created by these false narratives of things that people think are happening, and they might be happening other places, but they're not happening in Boise. And if you come and you meet people, you'll see that there are way more than two sides of this issue. There's as many sides of this issue as there are people.
Thank you so much. This meant so much to me. Can I hug you?
Absolutely.
Why are we putting that responsibility on them? What if something happens where they don't do something right and something happens, then are they going to be liable for that?
I'm just, at this point, not comfortable dealing with that nonsense.
How I see this is that the church is laying on, like you said, circumcision or, what you can and can't eat and, things like that. I mean, not literally, but figuratively. I think those are really good, a really good analogy to what's happening with the temperature checks or with mask wearing.
It's just one step closer to me. A temperature check would be one step closer to, okay, what if they don't have temperature? Or what if they do? Am I going to be denied access?
Yeah, I teach apologetics. I teach worldview. Right. Yeah, I do. That's actually my ministry. I've just been called to do that. I mostly do it with teens, but also their parents. I consider myself a follower of Christ. Absolutely, yes. I am absolutely firmly biblical worldview. Yeah, I teach it. So my concerns with it, with doing temperature checks at church, especially with the churches kind of signing on to the 501c3 thing, and there are some states now that are trying to track church behavior and activity and all of that. If they start taking our temperatures at church, there's nothing really to stop them from starting to record those kinds of information. And then with contact tracing and the like, I can totally see that being used to, at some point, then, your child runs a fever, now they're counted as a COVID, and now the contact tracer comes and your entire family is quarantined, and everyone you've contacted for 14 days, is now in quarantine too. And so, I can see it being used nefariously, and that's my problem with most of what's going on, is not how it's being used now, but the potential for how it will be used in the future. And so I can... Yeah, exactly. So I see that as a major problem. So were I to try to put my child in a daycare at church or whatever, that would definitely make me change my mind, just because I can see it being used poorly, and I wouldn't want to put my child in harm's way and potentially my whole family in harm's way by doing that, just potentially. I think any church who is excluding people because of their reticence to comply with this kind of stuff is not wise and not practicing biblical Christianity. So there's definitely some absolutes in the Bible as far as you don't do this and you do this and that sort of thing. But most of the principles of the Bible are absolutely a matter of conscience. God convicts some of some things and others of other things. And if we are convicted of it, that does not mean to lay that burden on our brother. That's actually extremely unbiblical to do that. I mean, that was preached against by Paul, by Jesus himself, by everyone. They don't want to lay on extra burdens, only the burdens that God himself knows the heart and knows what people can handle and can't handle. It's self-policing, in other words, right? Otherwise we stumble into legalism, where it just becomes a matter of somebody's set of rules rather than what God has convicted them of in their hearts and spirits. So that's how I see this, is that the church is laying on, like you said, circumcision or, what you can and can't eat and, things like that. I mean, not literally, but figuratively. I think those are really good, a really good analogy to what's happening with the temperature checks or with mask wearing or with, who can and can't be within 6 feet of each other, roping off, pews and whatnot. I think it's great to give those options to people. I think it's abhorrent to make those requirements, much like why I'm down here at protesting the mask requirement. If people want to wear masks, that more to power to them, but to mandate that from above becomes unconscionable.
Would you ever consider attending a church where your children would have to be temp checked to use the kids program?
Probably not. I've also kind of been in the process of looking for a new church. And at least the one that I have been researching on going to, they are kind of doing things a little slow as far as getting people in a church and only allowing a certain amount of people in. I think that church, maybe another one, is also doing like a register before you come to church sort of thing. So up until things loosen up, we probably won't be going back. We've just been mainly watching online services like everyone else. So yeah, I would say that would be my stance. I probably wouldn't. To me, it's just going overboard. It's not needed. And what the reasons behind that are, where that information is going, obviously to the government, what they're using it for, I don't know. Obviously contract tracing is probably part of it. I'm just, at this point, not comfortable dealing with that nonsense.
What is your name?
Brian Gillenwater.
Cool. So here's my question. I love your sign, by the way.
Thank you.
Would you ever consider attending a church where the children have to be temperature checked to get into?
Never.
Never?
No.
Would you mind telling me why?
I have free association, and if I want to go to a church and they want to accept me, that's great. This has never been a question until the year 2020. And if they want to check temperatures to allow people into their church, all for it. Great. They can do that. They have free association. They can invite in whoever they want and not invite in anybody they don't want. I'm fine with that. Not offended, and even if I was, who cares? That's your right. I choose not to. I choose not to. My kids will not be temperature checked. They will not be vaccinated. And my kids, unless they want to, when they understand what they're doing, they are free to do what they want. But until then, God has made me their guardian. God has given them to me to raise them right, and to help them understand right from wrong. And it's just one step closer to me. A temperature check would be one step closer to, okay, what if they don't have temperatures? Or what if they do? Am I going to be denied access?
Do you mind if I ask what your religion is?
I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And I just wanted to get your sign.
And by the way, I just want to say, I speak for myself. I don't speak for that religion.
Right.
If people are sick, they should be responsible and stay home.
You feel like you could trust. You have that level of basic trust with people.
It's a risk I take every time I go out. There's people that are driving on the road that are being risky. That's more of a risk than this COVID thing ever is. I trust my neighbor. I love my neighbor. And I love my God. And he will provide for me. He will take care of me. And if not, if something bad happens, that's okay. I will not live in fear. I'm following my conscience. And if I die doing that, so be it.
Wow. Pleasure talking to you.
Of course.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
of course.
all that. Yeah. God bless you. I love it. Thank you. Would you be okay with me asking you a couple questions?
I'll pass.
Okay. God bless. No, it's cool. Have a good day.
You too.
Why are we putting that responsibility on them? What if something happens where they don't do something right and something happens, then are they going to be liable for that? I mean, where is that line? And that is what concerns me, is that we're putting responsibility onto people that shouldn't have to have that responsibility placed on them. So, like, my church is not doing temperature checks, or masks are optional. They have a whole schedule that they're doing. That's fine. I have no problem with that. They can, the way that they feel it's going to be the best is fine. It's still optional if you even want to attend. Still, you can still do it in your home, like we've been doing it since the whole shutdown of the churches. Which is fine. But still, we're not doing the temperature checks and stuff, which is good, because I don't want to put someone's, my responsibility that should be mine onto somebody else. So that's the problem that I have with that, is that we're putting responsibility on the people that should not have to have that responsibility, because if something does happen, then are they going to be liable for that? And that's concerning, especially when they're teenagers. So I wouldn't want my teenager to have that responsibility placed on them.
Yeah, a lot of those workers are teenagers.
Yeah, and I worked in healthcare for a long time. I worked at the hospitals, and so I went through the mask training and all that sort of stuff. But with HIPAA, because it's so regulated and it's supposed to be so private, are we opening that up now to all who knows what? Because we're allowing our information to be gathered by someone who is not HIPAA regulated medically, and now we're putting that responsibility onto them. And we shouldn't be doing that. HIPAA is supposed to be about privacy, right? That's what it was designed for, medical health privacy. And now we're opening that up. It's like opening a Pandora's box. So what else is going to come out of it? I don't know yet. But I don't want to go down that path, because once you go down that path, and if you end up with issues and problems and unintended consequences, like happens to so many things when you do that, it's really hard to pull it back the other direction. So that's it. And I don't want churches to have that responsibility. Parents should be able to make that decision and be able to know. I mean, I know when my kids have a fever, and if they're not going to, I'm not going to take them to church if they're sick and they have a fever and all that. I'm just not going to. So we shouldn't be putting that responsibility and taking that away from the parents, because that's their responsibility to be able to make sure their kids are healthy to go to church or not. Everybody has individual responsibility. That's not the government's job. The government's job is not to take over responsibility for yourself. Your job is to take that responsibility and to make sure you're doing what's right for everybody else around you. So, and for your family and for yourself. Yeah, absolutely. So you don't want to take that away, because once you start taking that away, then you create a dependency on the government to be taken care of, and then the decision making is going to translate over to the government, or to the churches, or to whoever, to have to make those decisions, and that's not right. You don't want to take away people's individual responsibility from them, because once you do, it's very hard to put it back. Because some people are fine. They're like, fine, take it away from me. I don't want it anymore anyway. But that's not how it works. I'm LDS.
I mean, I already knew that.
Yeah. I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah. Also known as LDS. Yeah. A gentleman in our church, he's in the higher part, Elder Bednar, who had a great talk that he gave on religious freedom. And it's not geared as far as like just specifically, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's religion in general, and how we should never shut down our churches and make the ability to get groceries and gasoline easier than it is to go to church. And so I recommend people watch it. It's very, very good. Again, Elder Bednar. But, and the other thing I have to point out too is that, we only see a certain part of what's transpiring wearing, and we still have to make the best decision for ourselves and for our families. But I know it puts people that are leaders of churches into quite a predicament because they are having to do things for the whole congregation.
A lot of people are really confused about viruses, about health, and about all these things, and even just about what our rights are, or about our Constitution that governs our land. So, like what I was saying before, so the only way that I would do some of any of those things, like temp checks for my kid or whatever, is if I truly felt like the Lord was saying, do this right now. This is something important you need to do for now. Just do this, and trusting in that revelation, that guidance and inspiration from
God told
Him.
you to do it.
Right, exactly. So through the Spirit, as I feel His messages to me, as I understand, then I would do that. If that's what He's asking, I know that's His will. At this point, He hasn't done that. I mean, we went back to church. We did not have to do any kind of temp check, and I would do what He asked me to do, even if other people around me think that I'm wrong. Then I would do it for Him. But otherwise, I wouldn't, because I want to make a stand. So when we did go to church, one of the things that I felt like the Lord wanted us to do was to try to see if there was anyone there that's willing to actually open their eyes and wake up to see what's going on with our government and with what's, with all of this, that it's not okay. This isn't okay.
So, would you ever consider attending a church where you had to have a certain vaccine to attend?
So once again, the only way I would ever do that is just if for some reason the Lord said yes. But in this case, especially with this vaccine, I don't think He's going to say that, because you don't want this vaccine. This one's going to be a bad one.
And churches, that's your personal rights.
Right.
Why would a church get involved in your personal rights? That's a little concerning.
Right.
That's overstepping bounds, just like the government enforcing it. I don't believe Christ talked about getting vaccines and things like that, right? I mean, the whole point of the church is to learn to become more like our Savior, not to be dictated to, and it's still our personal choice. That's Satan's plan. Satan's plan is to force and to manipulate and to push.
And to take away your agency. We just actually, and once again, felt inspired. The Lord saying, try to help people wake up. So even our own family that we hadn't shared all the information about what we've learned about with vaccines, about aborted fetal cells in them, about the agendas, about the pharmaceutical companies that have zero liability, and all of those things. And there was a whole lot more, but we actually wrote up something and sent it out to them and just said, we love you, and we feel like we would feel bad if we didn't try to at least let you know what we feel like the Lord has been helping us to see and opening our eyes to. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are waking up right now.
I do too. Yeah.
I'll get your sign. Thank you. I really appreciate it. My name is Nikki, by the way. Emily, nice to meet you again. Would you ever consider attending a church where the kids program has mandated temperature checks?
No, that definitely would not be in line with my beliefs. That church is definitely not the place for that.
Why do you feel that way?
Right now, the coronavirus issue has become a politically polarizing issue, and I believe that the church needs to stay out of politics entirely. So by requiring a mask or requiring a temperature check, the church would be specifically taking a political stance, which would never be the position of the church.
I never thought of it that way. Like, that was a really good point. Thank you for sharing that. Did you shut down and you went back, or?
No, we're part of a small group. So we were able to discuss with the individuals in our group, what everyone's personal safety level was. And at this point, it's nice because it's a small gathering, so we can send a text message and kind of see where everyone's at and respect everybody's personal boundaries. And honestly, in my particular community, we have pretty much every perspective is being represented. And it's taken a lot of just emotional courage to say, that's not why we are here for church. We're not going to let this split us up. We're not going to let this divide us.
Thank you so much. Did you have any other thoughts you wanted to share?
Yeah, I'll share one more. What I have seen is that if you actually actually come out to a protest and you watch what's happening and you have conversations with people on both sides of the issue, you're going to see what's actually happening. You're going to see the truth, and it's going to remove the feelings of fear that you get from consuming the media and being on social media like all day. Because I have friends in Meridian who would not come to this protest because they thought that Antifa was going to show up. There is a degree of fear that is being created by these false narratives of things that people think are happening, and they might be happening other places, but they're not happening in Boise. And if you come and you meet people, you'll see that there are way more than two sides of this issue. There's as many sides of this issue as there are people.
Thank you so much. This meant so much to me. Can I hug you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dangerous hugging situation.
I want to do the membership, like, you give me so much.
Hey there.
Hey, thank you for everything you do for us, man. What's that? Thank you for everything you do for us.
Hey, thank you for being here. I actually like the police masks. They're cool.
We'll talk to you.
I'm not a reporter.
You'll be on the news and it'll make it sound like you said something.
Would you like us to write it down for you?
Oh, no, I can write it down.